My brother, Gary, poured a $200 bottle of champagne over my head at his own wedding because I wouldn't give him my beach house. He and his bride thought it was the funniest joke in the world. Until our family lawyer, a guest at table 4, stood up and yelled 4 words that made my brother's blood run cold. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The ballroom was suffocating. It wasn't just the 200 bodies packed into a space designed for 150, or the cloying scent of thousands of white roses wilting under the heat of the magenta uplighting. It was the low-grade fever I'd been nursing for 3 days, a parting gift from a vicious flu that had left me weak, aching, and emotionally fragile. I'd almost stayed home. God, I wished I had. I clutched a glass of sparkling water, the ice long melted, and tried to paste a serene, big sisterly smile on my face. My brother, Gary, was at the head table on a gaudy, throne-like white chair, his arm draped around his new wife, Bianca. He was laughing, a loud, braying sound that had always set my teeth on edge. And now, the MC announced, a toast from the man of the hour, our groom, Gary. Gary sprang to his feet, grabbing his champagne flute and the bottle of vintage Dom Perignon from the ice bucket. He stumbled slightly, and I felt a familiar knot of dread tighten in my stomach. He was already halfway drunk. This was not going to be good. He tapped the microphone, the feedback shrieking through the speakers. "Wow, what a day, what a wife," he slurred, planting a wet, performative kiss on Bianca's cheek. She giggled, a high-pitched, breathy sound, and angled her face toward the nearest phone camera. "I want to thank everyone for coming," Gary continued, his eyes scanning the room. "For all the gifts." He paused, and his eyes landed directly on me. The playful, drunken mask dropped, replaced by a flash of cold resentment that was so potent I felt it from 30 feet away. "You know," he said, his voice dropping into a confidential tone that the microphone amplified to every corner of the room. "Family is supposed to be about generosity, about support, about sharing in your new life. Most of my family gets that." A nervous murmur rippled through our relatives' tables. I felt my face flush, the fever and the sudden, intense scrutiny making me dizzy. I knew exactly where this was going. "But then," he sneered, "some people just don't. Some people get selfish." He began to walk, weaving his way between the tables, heading directly for me. Bianca was watching him, a smug, satisfied smirk on her perfectly contoured face. This was planned. This was their little performance. "My big sister, Willow," he announced, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Partner at a big, fancy firm, got all the money in the world." He was at my table now, looming over me. The guests were silent, watching this horrifying domestic drama unfold. "Willow," he said, holding up the champagne bottle, "has this beautiful beach house. Our parents' beach house, the one we grew up in." He conveniently left out the part where our parents had left it exclusively to me, in a trust, for reasons that were becoming clearer by the second. And I said, "Willow, what a perfect wedding gift. Give me the house." And you know what she said? He leaned in, his breath hot and sour with champagne. She said no. A few of his loutish friends in the back booed, thinking it was a joke. "She said no," he repeated, laughing, "to her only brother, on his wedding day. Can you believe the selfishness?" I tried to stand, my legs trembling. "Gary, this is not the time or the place," I whispered, my voice HOSE from the flu and humiliation. "Oh, it's exactly the time and place," he shouted. "You wanted to make a scene by saying no, so I'll make a scene by saying yes." He looked at Bianca, who raised her glass and nodded, egging him on. "I wanted to give you a chance to change your mind, Willow," he said, his eyes glittering with malice. "But you're just too cold. You need to loosen up. Cool down." And with that, he upended the entire, ice-cold bottle of champagne over my head. The shock of the cold liquid was instantaneous and total. It hit my scalp, a freezing, sugary cascade that drenched my hair, streamed down my face, and soaked the silk dress I'd spent a fortune on. I gasped, a sharp, involuntary intake of breath, as the laughter of 200 guests, some confused, some nervous, most of them Gary and Bianca's friends, erupted around me. I sat there, frozen, dripping, and utterly humiliated, shivering from the cold and the fever. Gary and Bianca were hysterical, clutching each other as they howled with laughter. "Now that's a real champagne shower," Gary bellowed. I looked down, blinking sticky champagne out of my eyelashes, and saw my hands shaking in my lap. I felt a single, hot tear of pure rage cut a path through the cold liquid on my cheek. In that moment, I wasn't a 42-year-old wealth management partner. I was a little girl again, being bullied by my brother in the backyard while he laughed. I thought about my illness, my grief for our parents, my years of supporting him. The betrayal was worse than the public humiliation. The seconds after the champagne hit my skin stretched into an agonizing eternity. The roar of laughter felt like a physical blow, and the icy liquid, now pooling in the bodice of my dress, made me shiver uncontrollably. My fever, which had been a dull throb, spiked into a raging inferno, my skin burning from the inside out while freezing on the surface. "Oh, lighten up, Willow," Gary slurred, tossing the empty bottle onto the table with a clatter. "It's just a joke, don't be such a sore loser." Bianca glided over, her phone held high, no doubt capturing the whole pathetic scene for her legion of online followers. "Ah, you look so refreshed, Willow," she cooed, the fake sympathy in her voice more insulting than the champagne. "Maybe now you'll be in a better mood to sign those papers? Consider it a christening for our new house." I couldn't find my voice. I could only stare at her, at the calculated cruelty in her eyes. This was the woman my brother had chosen. This was the woman he was prioritizing over his own family. "Gary," a low, firm voice cut through the din. It was my Uncle Howard, our father's brother. He was standing, his napkin crumpled in his fist, his face a mask of thunder. "You apologize to your sister, right now." Gary's face darkened. "Mind your own business, Uncle. It's my wedding. I'm just having some fun with my selfish sister." "That's enough," another voice said. This one was quieter, but it carried an authority that made Gary pause. It was David Chen, our family's longtime estate lawyer and a close friend of my late father. He was sitting at table 4, a guest I had personally invited, a man who had known me since I was in pigtails. He was looking at Gary not with anger, but with a profound, almost clinical disappointment that seemed to sober my brother up more than a pot of black coffee ever could. Gary, for all his bluster, had always been terrified of figures of authority. He faltered, his drunken bravado cracking. It was a joke, David. Willow knows I'm kidding." I finally found my legs. I stood up, dripping, the silk of my dress clinging to me like a second, sodden skin. The room was spinning. "No, Gary," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "I don't know you're kidding. I don't think you are." I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't storm out. I walked, with as much dignity as a woman soaked in champagne and battling a 101-degree fever could muster, down the long aisle between the tables, through the lobby, and out into the cool night air. I heard my uncle call my name, and I heard David's chair scrape back, but I didn't stop. I sat in my car in the valet line, the heaters blasting, shivering so hard my teeth chattered. The humiliation was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't just the champagne. It was the public declaration. He had drawn a line, and he had placed me firmly on the other side of it, all for a house. A tap on my window made me jump. It was David Chen. He had my purse and my coat, which I'd left at the table. I unlocked the door, and he slipped into the passenger seat, his expression grim. "Willow, are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice cracking. "Just cold." He handed me my coat, and I wrapped it around my shoulders, the dry wool a small comfort. "What he did in there," David said, his voice hardening, "was not just cruel, Willow. It was colossally stupid." "He's an idiot," I whispered, tears of frustration finally breaking free. "He's an entitled, spoiled idiot, and I'm done, David. I'm just done." "He is," David agreed. But he's also something more. He's desperate, and Bianca is a catalyst. He looked at me, his gaze sharp and focused. You've been managing the trust perfectly for a decade, Willow. You've been more than fair. You've been generous to a fault, letting him use that house as his personal party pad. I know, I said, wiping my face. I thought it would be enough. It's never enough for people like Gary and Bianca, David said. He paused, as if weighing his next words. He's been calling my office, for the past 6 weeks, demanding copies of the trust, demanding to know how he can get his half of the house. This was news to me. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, David said, that the trust is clear, that you are the sole trustee and the property is to be preserved, not liquidated, that he is a beneficiary but he has no authority. It seemed to make him angry. So this was his revenge. I said, the pieces clicking into place, because I followed our parents' wishes. Precisely. David looked back toward the ballroom, where the music had started up again, a thumping, obnoxious beat, as if nothing had happened. Gary is a fool. He just tried to publicly humiliate the one person who has been protecting him, but they both seem to have forgotten one crucial thing. I looked at him. What's that? David's expression was unreadable, but there was a glint in his eye. They've forgotten what a trust is. They've forgotten that our parents' wishes are not suggestions. They are legally binding documents, and they've forgotten who I am. He placed a hand on my arm. Go home, Willow. Get warm, get well. I'll handle the immediate fallout in there. But I think it's time we reviewed the trust's discretionary clauses. Gary seems to be under the impression that his access to that beach house is a right. It's time we reminded him that it has always been a privilege, one that can be revoked. The words sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the champagne. A privilege. Revoked. A tiny, hard kernel of resolve began to form in my chest, right next to the hurt. They had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that I wasn't just their selfish sister. I was the executor, and the game they had just started was one they had absolutely no idea how to play. The beach house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was a vault of my entire childhood. It was the last tangible piece of my parents I had left. I remembered my father, his sleeves rolled up, teaching me how to caulk the windows, his voice patient as he explained why a job worth doing is a job worth doing right. I remembered my mother, sitting on the screened-in porch, helping me with a 1,000-piece puzzle, the scent of salt air and her rose-scented lotion filling my lungs. It was also the place I had poured my own life into. After my parents passed, the house had fallen into disrepair. While Gary, then in his mid-20s, was busy finding himself by bouncing between ski-bum jobs and backpacking trips, all funded by the modest inheritance our parents left him, I was at the beach house every weekend. I spent over $100,000 of my own money I had earned at my high-pressure job, meticulously restoring it. I replaced the roof, sanded the floors, modernized the kitchen, and rebuilt the porch. I did it because I loved the house, and I did it because I knew my parents would have wanted it preserved. Gary, of course, loved the new beach house. Once the work was done, he started visiting. He'd bring flocks of loud, messy friends, treating the place like a free motel. He'd leave sandy towels on the hardwood floors, drink all the good liquor from the cabinet, and forget to clean up before he left. I'd drive down to find empty bottles, overflowing trash, and once, a horrifying burn mark on the new porch railing. I tried to set boundaries. I created a calendar. I asked him to chip in for the utilities. The requests were met with eye rolls and accusations. It's a family house, Willow. Why are you being so corporate about it? It's a trust house, Gary, I'd remind him, my patience fraying. And I am the trustee. I have a legal responsibility to maintain its value. Legal, he'd scoff. You're no fun. But I was generous. I let him use it for holidays, for long weekends, for networking parties for his fledgling real estate career. I did it because he was my brother, and because, deep down, I still saw the little boy I'd taught to ride a bike. I thought that by being accommodating, I could maintain a relationship. Then Bianca entered the picture. I met her a year ago at a family dinner. She was, I had to admit, stunning. She had the kind of effortless, curated beauty that only comes from immense, daily effort. She was a lifestyle influencer. A job title I, as a wealth manager, found baffling. Her entire career seemed to be built on posting photos of expensive things. From the moment she walked in, she was on. She filmed her arrival, she filmed the dinner, she filmed Gary opening a bottle of wine. It was exhausting, but what set my teeth on edge was her conversation. "So Willow," she'd said, her voice a practiced, breathy purr, "Gary tells me you work in numbers." "I manage wealth portfolios, yes," I'd replied politely. "Oh, that's so? Quaint," she'd smiled, as if I'd just told her I darned socks for a living. "I find that real wealth isn't in numbers on a screen, it's in assets. You know, tangible things, like property." Her eyes had flicked to a framed photo of the beach house on my mantel. The look in them was not appreciative, it was appraising. "Gary just loves that beach house," she'd continued, laying a perfectly maniciled hand on his arm. "He's so sentimental. He says it's the only place he really feels like himself." I'd watched Gary preen under her touch. This was the RSD time I'd ever heard him described as sentimental. Careless and entitled were the words that came to my mind. Over the next few months, Bianca's campaign began. It was subtle at first. She'd post photos from the beach house, tagging it home or our happy place. She'd send me texts. "Willow, darling, we were thinking of redoing the guest room. The nautical theme is just so dated, I have a mood board." I gently but firmly reminded her that it was a trust property, not her personal design project. Her replies became shorter, colder. Then, 2 months before the wedding, Gary had called me. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. "So, Bianca and I have been talking," he'd said, his voice full of false bravado. "We've decided we want the beach house, as a wedding gift." I had actually laughed. "Gary, you know I can't give you the house. It's not mine to give, it's in the trust." "Oh, come on, Willow, don't be like that. You're the trustee or whatever, just sign a paper, make it ours. It's the right thing to do. Bianca deserves a beautiful home." "Deserves it? And what about my responsibility to our parents' wishes? The trust is explicit. The property is to be preserved for the benefit of, well, both of us, and any future generations. I can't just sign it over to you." "Why not?" he'd snapped. "You don't even use it that much. You're always working, we'd live there, we'd appreciate it. You're just hoarding it, Willow, it's selfish. You've always been selfish." The accusation, after the decades I'd spent cleaning up his messes, paying his old college debts, co-signing for his first car, and now maintaining the very house he was demanding, was breathtaking. "The answer is no, Gary," I'd said, my voice flat and final. "It's not happening. I will not break the trust our parents put in me." I hung up and the Cold War began. He didn't speak to me again until the wedding. The next time I saw him, he was walking toward me, a bottle of champagne in his hand and pure, unadulterated malice in his eyes. Looking back, I saw the pattern. Gary, weak and desperate for the approval of this shiny, manipulative woman. Bianca, a shallow creature who saw the beach house not as a home, but as a backdrop, a status symbol, an asset to be leveraged for her brand. They weren't just entitled. They were a dangerous combination of lazy and greedy. And they had just made the catastrophic mistake of declaring war on the one person who held all the legal cards. The morning after the wedding, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The fever had finally broken, but the emotional hangover was severe. My hair was still tacky in places, and the smell of stale champagne clung to my skin despite a scalding shower. My silk dress was a ruined, shrunken heap on the bathroom floor. But as I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee, the humiliation from the night before began to curdle into a cold, hard resolve. The fog of sickness and shock was clearing. I was a wealth manager. My entire career was built on logic, on strategy, and on protecting assets from emotional, irrational decisions. Gary and Bianca had just treated me like a fool, It was time I reminded them what I actually did for a living. I thought of David Chen's words. He's forgotten what a trust is. He was right. Gary had always seen the trust as a suggestion, a bit of annoying paperwork that I, his uptight sister, used to control him. He had no concept of its legal, ironclad power. He had no idea what fiduciary duty meant. My parents had set up the trust for a reason. They loved Gary, but they weren't blind. They knew his impulsive nature, his susceptibility to bad influences, his utter lack of financial discipline. They had made me the sole trustee to protect the house from him and, in a way, for him. The trust stipulated that the house was to be maintained and that if it were ever sold, a decision only I could make, the proceeds would be split. But in its current form, it was an asset for the enjoyment of the family, not for liquidation. By demanding I sign it over, Gary wasn't just being a brat. He was asking me to commit a felony. He was asking me to violate my fiduciary duty, an act that could not only get me sued, but could have me disbarred from my own profession. And he had done it publicly, in front of 200 witnesses. My clever trap wasn't something I had to build. My parents had already built it for me. I just had to spring it. I picked up my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to David Chen. David, it's Willow. I'm feeling much better. I'd like to meet this afternoon, if you're free. I want to review the revocation of privileges clause in the trust. I also want to draft a formal cease and desist. I've already pulled the file, David said, his voice all business. I'll be ready at 2. The second call was to a man named Mark Sanderson, one of the best private investigators my firm kept on retainer. We used him for due diligence, to vet potential business partners, and to find skeletons in closets before they could rattle. Mark, hi, it's Willow, I said. I have a personal matter. I need a deep dive background check on a woman. Her name is Bianca DeLuca. My brother just married her. I want everything. Credit history, past addresses, any past relationships of note, legal issues, bankruptcies, the works. Got it, Mark said, no questions asked. How fast? Yesterday. It'll be expensive, he warned. Put it on my personal account, I said. I want to know who is really sleeping in my brother's bed. That afternoon, I sat in David Chen's plush office, a fresh copy of the trust document in my hands. It's even better than I remembered, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. David nodded. Your father was a very smart man. Look at Article 4, Section B, Use of the Property. It states that beneficiaries, that includes Gary, are granted revocable privileges to use the property, contingent on their respect for the property itself and the integrity of the trust and its trustee. Contingent on respect for the trustee, I repeated, the words tasting like victory. Pouring champagne on the trustee's head in a public attempt to coerce her into breaking the trust. I'd say that qualifies as a lack of respect. It's a flagrant violation, David agreed, steepling his fingers. You are well within your rights to revoke his access, permanently. Let's draft the letter, I said, and a formal no trespass order. We'll have it served to his home address and to his real estate office. What about Bianca? David asked. She's not a beneficiary, I said coldly. She has no rights to the property whatsoever. She is now and will always be a guest. And as she is no longer welcome as my guest, her access is also terminated. We worked for an hour, drafting the coldest, most legally precise documents I had ever had the pleasure of co-authoring. They outlined Gary's actions at the wedding, cited the exact clause in the trust he had violated, and informed him that his privileges to use, enter, or access the beach house were hereby terminated, effective immediately. Any attempt to do so would be met with legal action. Just as we were finishing, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Mark the Pie. The subject line was, Bianca DeLuca, you need to see this. I opened it, my blood ran cold. Bianca DeLuca, or as she was formerly known, Bianca Gallo, was not just a vapid influencer. She was a professional. She had 2 prior marriages, both to older, wealthy men. Both marriages had ended after less than 2 years, and both times she had walked away with significant settlements. She had a string of debts, a recent bankruptcy filing that had been dismissed, and most damningly, she was a defendant in an active civil lawsuit in Arizona, filed by the children of her last husband, accusing her of undue influence and financial elder abuse. She wasn't just a gold digger, she was a predator, and she had my stupid, gullible brother wrapped around her finger. "My God," I whispered, handing the phone to David. He read the report, his eyebrows climbing his forehead. "Well," he said, his voice grim, "this changes things. This isn't just a family squabble. Your brother is in serious, serious trouble." The investigation had started as a way to get leverage. It had just turned into a rescue mission. But to save my brother, I first had to completely and totally destroy his new wife. The day after the wedding, Gary and Bianca were, predictably, silent. I assumed they were on a plane to whatever honeymoon Bianca had demanded. I used the quiet to put my pieces in place. I had a locksmith change all the locks at the beach house, installed a new high-tech security system, and had the no trespass orders couriered to a process server, ready to be delivered the moment they returned. They didn't go on a honeymoon. A week later, my phone rang. It was Gary. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. Finally, a string of texts came through. "Gary, Willow, pick up the phone. Gary, this isn't funny. The real estate agent for the beach house rental says the keys don't work. Gary, Bianca and I are standing on the porch. The code isn't working. Fix it." I smiled. The real estate agent was Gary himself. He'd been secretly listing the house on short-term rental sites, a direct violation of the trust and HOA rules, and pocketing the cash. I'd found out about it months ago and had been building a case. "Gary, Willow, I have renters showing up in an hour. They paid me a $5,000 deposit. Where the hell are you?" I decided to answer, "Hello, Gary." "Finally," he yelled, his voice tinny and furious. "What did you do to the locks? I'm locked out. I have clients coming." "You mean the illegal renters you're pocketing cash from in violation of the trust?" I asked calmly. "Don't worry about them. I had my lawyer see. Untacked the rental platform. Your listing has been flagged and removed for fraud. The family you scammed will be getting a full refund." There was a stunned, sputtering silence on the other end. You what? How did you? "Did you think I was stupid, Gary? Did you think I wouldn't notice the revolving door of strangers at our parents' house?" "You have no right," he shrieked. "That was my money." "It was money earned by illegally using a trust asset," I corrected him. "And speaking of which, you should check your mail. A process server dropped off a package for you at your office this morning. It's also been mailed to your apartment." "What package? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Article 4, Section B," I said, my voice as cold as the champagne he'd poured on me. "Your privileges to access the beach house have been revoked, permanently. If you are still on the property, I suggest you leave. The new security system has already flagged your presence to the local police." I heard a new voice. "Bianca, what is it? What is she saying?" Gary's voice was a panicked whisper. "She's kicking us out. She changed the locks. She says we're trespassing." "What?" Bianca shrieked. The phone was clearly on speaker. "You tell her, Gary. Tell her she can't do this to us. It's our house." "Actually, Bianca, it's not," I said, my voice bright and clear. "It's the trust's house, and you are not a beneficiary, you are a guest, and you are no longer welcome. Ever." You can't do this," Bianca screamed. "We're married. What's his is mine. We'll sue you. We'll sue you for his inheritance." "Go ahead," I said, almost laughing. "Please try. I would love to see your face in a deposition. I'm sure the children of Mr. Abernathy in Arizona would be fascinated to hear about your new target. Or should I call you Bianca Gallo?" The line went dead, not just a hang-up. It was a panicked, fumbling silence, as if the phone had been dropped. I sat back, my heart hammering. I had thrown the first stone. I had revealed a key piece of information that I knew her real name. It was a gamble. I had shattered her composure, but I had also shown my hand. The reaction was immediate. A few minutes later, my phone lit up with a blocked number. I let it ring, and again, and again. Then came the texts, this time from Bianca's number. Bianca, who do you think you are? Bianca, you are trying to ruin my life. Bianca, Gary loves me. He won't let you do this. You are a sad, jealous old woman. Bianca, I don't know who Mr. Abernathy is and you have no proof. Her poorly executed threats were all the confirmation I needed. She was panicked. She was sloppy. I had hit the nerve. But then, a text from Gary came and that chilled me. Gary, you think you're so smart. You think you can just take my house and slander my wife. You're wrong. You're going to sign that house over. I'm going to make you. The threat was vague, but the malice was not. The boy I grew up with was gone, replaced by this desperate, cornered man, fully under the control of a professional predator. The game had just escalated. I knew Bianca's history. She wouldn't just walk away. She would fight, and she would fight dirty. I called Mark, the pie. I need you to find the Abernathy children's lawyer. Now, and I think I need to hire personal security. The trap was set, but the animal was now wounded, and wounded animals are the most dangerous. The following 2 weeks were a masterclass in desperation. Bianca, apparently recovering from her initial shock, launched a full-scale smear campaign. My inbox was flooded with emails from distant relatives and old family friends, all asking why I was financially abusing my brother. My dearest Willow, one email from a second cousin began, I was so distressed to hear that you are withholding Gary's inheritance and trying to make him and his lovely new bride homeless. Surely this is not what your parents would have wanted. Bianca's fingerprints were all over it. She had weaponized the concerned family network, painting me as a cold, heartless spinster. A dragon, her word, repeated in 3 different emails, hoarding a treasure that rightfully belonged to my charming, good-hearted brother. Simultaneously, Gary's behavior became more erratic. He left rambling, tearful voicemails, alternating between begging for forgiveness and threatening to expose me. Willow, please, Bianca is. She's so upset, one message slurred. Just give us the house and it can all go back to normal. We can be a family again. An hour later, another message. You're going to regret this, Willow. You're tearing this family apart. Bianca is right, you're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. It was pathetic, and for a moment I almost felt a pang of pity. This was not the brother I knew. This was a puppet. But the pity evaporated when I saw the charge on the trust's credit card. It was from a hardware store near the beach house, for a crowbar. I immediately checked the new security feed on my phone. There, in horrifyingly clear HD, was Gary. He was on the back porch, trying to pry open the new locks on the French doors. Bianca was standing on the lawn, filming him, yelling, "Harder, baby, it's our house." I called the police. They arrived in minutes. Gary and Bianca were arrested for trespassing and attempted breaking and entering. This, I knew, was the final piece. I called David Chen. They did it, David. They tried to break in. I have it on video. That's it, David said, his voice grim. That's the ball game. The next day, Mark, the pie, delivered the final nail for Bianca's coffin. He had found him, Thomas Abernathy, the son of Bianca's last victim, and his lawyer. They had been trying to build their civil case against Bianca for months, but they were missing a crucial piece, a pattern of behavior. Mr. Abernathy is flying in from Phoenix tomorrow, Mark told me. He is very interested in meeting you and your brother. Now I had to do the hardest part. I had to get Gary in a room, away from Bianca, and show him the monster he had married. I had the charges for the break-in held, not dropped. I had David call Gary's new lawyer, a bottom feeder Bianca had clearly found, and offer a family meeting to resolve this unfortunate situation before the charges were pressed. Gary agreed immediately, likely thinking he could finally bully me into submission. He arrived at David's office alone, as per our conditions. He looked terrible. He was pale, jumpy, and had lost weight. Willow, he started, trying to sound forceful, you have to call off the cops. This is insane. You're pressing charges against your own brother. Sit down, Gary, I said. David Chen sat at the head of the conference table. Gary, David began, we are here to discuss the criminal charges of trespassing and property damage, and the civil matter of your sustained campaign of harassment and coercion against your sister, the trustee. Coercion, Gary scoffed. I just want what's mine. This is what's yours, Gary, I said, sliding a thick document across the table. It was the complete P&L for the beach house for the last 5 years. This is what it costs to maintain the house. The property taxes, the new roof, the insurance, the utilities, all paid for, as you'll see, either by the trust or directly from my personal accounts. And this, I said, sliding another folder, is the $32,000 you've stolen by illegally renting it out. Gary's face went white. And this, I said, my voice dropping, is your wife. I pushed Mark's report across the table. Her name isn't Bianca DeLuca, it's Bianca Gallo. This is a copy of her recent bankruptcy. These are the details of her 2 previous marriages. And this, I said, tapping the final page, is the civil suit against her in Arizona for financial elder abuse. She targets wealthy families, Gary. She finds the weak link, marries him, and then pressures him to liquidate assets. He stared at the paper, his hands shaking. This is lies, you're making this up. Am I asked. Or does it sound familiar? Does it sound like, give me the house, baby, it's ours, we deserve it? He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. He was struggling, his loyalty to Bianca warring with the irrefutable proof in front of him. She loves me, he whispered, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. She loves the beach house, I countered, and she was willing to have you arrested to get it. Just then the conference room door opened. David Chen stood. Gary, Willow, this is Mr. Thomas Abernathy. He flew in from Phoenix to be here. A man, roughly my age, with tired eyes and a face etched with grief, walked in. He looked at Gary, and his expression hardened with a painful recognition. So, Thomas Abernathy said, his voice quiet but shaking with rage. You're the new one. You're the one she's using to try and steal your family's home, just like she tried to steal my father's. Gary looked from the report to Mr. Abernathy to me. The spell didn't just break, it shattered. The color drained from his face as he finally understood the truth. He wasn't her partner. He was her mark. The event was our Uncle Howard's 70th birthday party. It was a large, catered dinner at the old, respectable country club our family had belonged to for generations. After the champagne incident, my relatives had fractured. Some, swayed by Bianca's lies, were cold to me. Others, like Uncle Howard, were firmly on my side. He had called me personally. Willow, he'd said, I don't care what's happening. You are my goddaughter, and you will be at my party. I knew Gary and Bianca would be there. They wouldn't dare miss such a public family event. It was the perfect stage. I arrived with David Chen as my guest. His presence immediately set the Bianca faction on E. DGE, but the real surprise was my second guest, Mr. Thomas Abernathy, who I introduced to everyone simply as a new client. Bianca, holding court near the bar, looked like a predator that had just smelled blood. She saw me, and her eyes narrowed. She saw David, and she looked annoyed. Then she saw the handsome, well-dressed stranger with me, and her entire demeanor changed. She visibly brightened, her smile widening, her posture shifting. She saw him as a potential new target. She had no idea who he was. The dinner was tense. I sat at a table with Uncle Howard, David, and Mr. Abernathy. Gary and Bianca were across the room, and I could feel Bianca's eyes on us all night. Gary just looked sick, staring at his plate. After the cake, Uncle Howard stood to give a speech. When he finished, Bianca, in a breathtaking display of audacity, stood up, champagne glass in hand. If I could just say a few words, she trilled, as if she were the hostess. I just want to say how wonderful it is to be part of this close family. Her eyes found mine. Family is so important. It's about loyalty. It's about sharing. A murmur of agreement went through some of the tables. Gary and I, she continued, have felt so, attacked recently, by people in this very room who have tried to keep things from us, who have hoarded the family's legacy. But we know that love and the law will win in the end. She was trying to paint me as a criminal, in front of everyone. I stood up. You're absolutely right, Bianca. The room went silent. Bianca looked momentarily stunned that I was engaging. You are so right, I said, my voice calm and carrying in the quiet room. The law will win in the end, and you should know all about that, shouldn't you, Ms. Gallo? Bianca's smile froze. Gary, who had been staring at his plate, snapped his head up, his face ashen. I'm sorry, Bianca said, her voice a few notes higher. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm talking to you, Bianca Gallo, I said, taking a step forward. From Phoenix, Arizona, I'm talking about your last husband, a 78-year-old man. I'm talking about the lawsuit his children filed against you for undue influence and elder abuse, for trying to coerce him into signing his house over to you. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. She's lying, Bianca shrieked, her mask of sophistication shattering. Gary, tell them she's lying. Gary was frozen, his mouth open, unable to speak. Am I asked. Then perhaps you can explain who my guest is. I gestured to my table. Bianca Gallo, I'd like to properly introduce you to Mr. Thomas Abernathy. He's the man who filed that lawsuit. The man whose father you left with $200,000 in debt after he'd had a stroke. Thomas Abernathy stood up, his face a mask of cold fury. He looked right at Bianca. You ruined my father, he said, his voice shaking. He died believing you loved him while you were maxing out his credit cards. I'm just glad my new friends at the Arizona Attorney General's office are finally taking an interest in your travels. Bianca's face crumpled. The blood drained from it, leaving her makeup looking like a grotesque mask. She looked at Gary, her eyes wide with panic. Gary, do something. But Gary wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. And for the first time in his life, I saw him not as a bully or a victim, but as a man who finally understood the depth of his own stupidity. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly. He was shaking. He looked at Bianca, at her perfect dress, her perfect hair, and the utter, grasping panic in her eyes. The police, he whispered, his voice cracking. The police, at the beach house. That was you. You told me to pry the door open. You filmed me. You were going to use it against me, weren't you? Bianca's face was her answer. She didn't deny it. Gary let out a sound, a choked, agonizing sob of realization. He saw it all. The joke at the wedding, the smear campaign, the break-in. It was all her. He was just the fool she'd found to do her dirty work. He turned, not to me, but to her. And in a moment of pure, unscripted drama, he did the only thing he could. Get out, he whispered. What? Bianca hissed. Get out, he roared, pointing to the door. Get away from me, you're a monster, you tried to ruin my sister, you ruined me. Bianca, for the first time, looked truly defeated. She saw the 150 faces of our family staring at her, no longer with admiration, but with dawning comprehension and disgust. She saw Gary, her puppet, his strings cut. She saw me, David, and Mr. Abernathy, an unbeatable legal team. She snatched her purse, her face a contortion of pure hatred. You'll regret this, Gary, she spat. You'll regret all of this. I doubt it, came David Chen's voice from the side. Ms. Gallo, I'd advise you to find a good criminal lawyer. You're going to need one. Bianca fled. She didn't walk, she ran, pushing past a waiter and shoving the club's main door open, disappearing into the night. The room was silent. Gary stood there, trembling, a man hollowed out. He looked at me, his eyes streaming. Willow, he choked out. I. He couldn't finish. He just crumpled back into his chair and buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the sobs of a man who had just lost everything and realized he'd been saved. In the stunned silence that followed Bianca's exit, David Chen and I walked over to Gary's table. He was still crying, a deep, shuddering, ugly sound of a man whose world had just imploded. My anger, which had been a shield for weeks, finally dissipated, leaving only a profound, familiar exhaustion. "Gary," I said, my voice softer than I intended, "it's over." He looked up at me, his face a wreck of tears and self-loathing. She told me you were lying, Willow. She said the report was fake. That you were just jealous." "I know," I said. "Let's get you out of here." Uncle Howard was already at the podium, his voice booming. "Well, it seems the entertainment is over. Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of the evening." He was, as always, the master of crisis management. David, Mr. Abernathy, and I got Gary out a side door. We sat him in my car, and I drove him back to my apartment, not his. He was in no condition to be alone. He was silent the entire ride, staring out the window, occasionally letting out a choked sob. When we got inside, he sat on my sofa, looking small and broken. She has my credit cards," he whispered. "The apartment, the lease is in both our names." "We'll handle it," I said. "David will file for an annulment first thing in the morning on grounds of fraud. We'll put a freeze on your cards. You'll be fine." "Fine," he scoffed, his voice raw. I poured champagne on your head, Willow, in front of everyone. I tried to steal our parents' house. I brought that monster into our family. How can I ever be fine?" I sat down across from him. "You can start by understanding, Gary. You were weak and you were greedy. She saw that, but you're not a monster, you're just my brother, and you've been a fool." He flinched, but he nodded. "I'm so sorry, Willow, I'm so sorry." The aftermath was swift and decisive. David Chen, working with Thomas Abernathy's legal team, presented the combined evidence to the Arizona Attorney General. The video of Bianca goading Gary to break into the house, combined with the testimony from the Abernathy case, was enough to paint a clear picture of a pattern of predatory behavior. A warrant was issued for her. She was apprehended 2 states over, trying to use one of Gary's credit cards at a high-end hotel. She is now facing a slew of charges in 2 states, including fraud, grand theft, and conspiracy. Gary's annulment was granted. He had to declare bankruptcy. Bianca had bled him dry. But it was the best thing that could have happened to him. He lost his flashy real estate job, his fake friends, and his ego. He ended up moving into my spare room for 3 months. It was a long, painful process of rebuilding. He went to therapy. He got a job, a real one with a salary, at a logistics company. He also, for the first time, came to the beach house to work. One weekend, about 6 months later, he came with me. He didn't sit on the porch. He spent 2 straight days sanding and restaining the railing he had burned all those years ago. We were sitting on the porch that Sunday evening, watching the sunset, my father's old toolbox between us. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "Dad, he really knew how to build things, didn't he?" "He did," I said. He turned to me, his eyes clear for the first time in years. "Thank you, Willow, for saving me, and for saving this. I know I don't deserve it, or you." "You're right," I said. "You don't, but you're my brother, and our parents' wishes were to preserve this house for the family. You're still family." I didn't restore his full privileges. I couldn't, but I did remove the no trespass order. He can come now, but only when I am here. It's a start. As for me, I have a sense of peace I haven't felt in years. The trust is secure. My family, what's left of it, is healing. My clever trap wasn't just about assets or revenge. It was about truth. Gary had to see the monster in front of him to finally stop being one himself. The champagne shower was the most humiliating night of my life, but it was also the night that finally cleaned house.